So I am Jonathan Fleming, and I am the president of the Center Monterey Neighborhood Association, also the president of the District 7 Leadership Group, and I am the vice chair of the Neighborhoods Commission for the City of San Jose. So it's important to remember I'm acting and speaking for myself tonight. I'm not allowed to speak as a commissioner or anything else. My presentation, there's a lot of slides. There's going to be a lot of information on it, and I'm going to post it all online because we're not going to get through all of it in 20 minutes. I am also, as Patty mentioned, running for City Council for District 7. So hopefully I get some support here from this room. Maybe some people want to help out with the campaign. That would be fantastic, but let's hear what I have to say first and then make up your minds. So I'm speaking because I was asked to be here. Patty and San Jose Action, they asked me to be here to present my presentation, which I've given to my neighborhood association, our leadership group, and numerous organizations throughout the city. We want to speak about 2500 Center Road. City procedures, policies, they weren't followed. State laws were broken. And residents, they were never informed or part of it. 2500 Center Road I'm speaking about because it's very familiar with the ACO or ACO Blossom Hill location. In fact, here's kind of two shots of the two facilities. 2500 Center Road, 162 units. Dual occupancy for up to 320 people. On-site security, and it's for chronically homeless persons only at 100%. You can see where it's located in our area. You can see my mouse. Yes. This is the facility in a residential zone with single-family homes, one story, some two-story condos. This is where the ACO ACO furniture would be. And this is where it would be with all the single-family homes around it. It's about 130 units, 150 units tops. We don't know what the occupancy is, if it's dual occupancy, if it's single occupancy. There's not going to be security, and we don't know the exact number yet of how many people will be housed there in terms of homeless, 30%, 40%, or more. It's not in the official language that they posted. Before I get into it, I want to make it known that I am in favor of helping the homeless, and I want to do it responsibly. Responsibly means that the goal of helping someone become self-dependent. I think that putting a vulnerable person into a room, into a house, and leaving them there without giving them services or giving them the support they need, you're just sweeping the problem under the rug. You're not really helping the person. You're just getting it off the street. Our city, I've been advocating for them to do an impact study to understand what the burden will be on our police, fire, and medical services. They've refused. The Neighborhood Commission, I actually got that item pushed through. We approved it. We went before the City Council, the Rules Committee, and they said, no, you can't work on it. We don't want you to. I wasn't very happy. Homelessness affects our entire city. And for those of you that want to see the outline of San Jose, there's 10 districts. We're here in District 2. District 7, we're bordered to the northwest. We're neighbors, we need to work together. We need to combat these issues together. And I think that we'll be successful if we do that. The City of San Jose, in partnership with the County of Santa Clara, ran a homeless survey. They wanted to see how many people were living in our city. And that number was 4,350 persons, 26% of which were sheltered. So that means 74% were not. And what does that mean? That means that there will be housing opportunities in every district down the road, especially with Measure A, which was just passed. Measure A was $950 million approved for homeless and low-income housing, $700 million of which is reserved specifically for a homeless population. But we need our cities and our districts to come together. We need to ensure that these facilities, they'll be built, but they'll be built responsibly to help the homeless community, while at the same time not placing our neighborhoods, our schools, and our small businesses at risk. We need to make sure that our property values aren't hurt, they don't decrease, and that they don't reduce the quality of life for our neighborhoods here in our city of San Jose. The fire department ran a study, and this was a 6-month study at the end of 2016, and they're the only jurisdiction that did this. Excuse me. They actually found that of all the response they had, 7%, roughly 7% were homeless related. That's about 3,104 calls. That's a big number. The San Jose Police Department, they don't track that number. They don't track what calls they go to. It's not in their system. It's not, they don't have the ability to. So what we do is we go to websites like crimereports.com and we can type in facilities that we know house homeless individuals to see what their impact is. I've done this with the Picardo Center in District 7, the largest shelter in all of Santa Clara County. In a 6-month period, there were 200 incidents in this area. Same thing with Markham Plaza Apartments, 558 incidents in 6 months. Now this isn't actually specifically for homeless. This is low income, this is very low income, and also the facility is next to another very low income facility, which is next to another very low income facility, which is right across the way from the plant where the Picardo Reception Center is. So they need to space them out. Otherwise we get this and it's overburdening on our police officers. It's not fair to have them respond to 558 responses in 6 months. I went on a ride-along with our San Jose police officers to see what this facility was like. And this is the outside of it. We ran into a very large homeless encampment. There was drugs. There were weapons. It was not clean, not sanitary. This is also the reason why we need to help these individuals. They shouldn't be living in these conditions. So I'm here to speak about 2500 Center Road. But I can't really do that because the city changed the number from 2500 to 2450 Center Road in an effort to stop us. So I'm still going to say 2500 because that's how I know it. But this is what it looks like. It's situated right at Center and Tully. We're in this residential zone. It's a large 4-story building, as I mentioned. This is what it's going to look like. In 2015, a church was destroyed at that site, and there were 54 trees that were removed in the process, and the trees were sad. In October of 2015, the residents around the area, including myself, I live across the street, we didn't know what was happening. The church was demolished, but what was going on? We hadn't received any notification. So in November, Charities Housing applied for their conditional use permit, a CUP, and they filed that with the City of San Jose. Does anyone know what a conditional use permit is in here?
No.
Well, you're in luck because a conditional use permit is essentially the document that allows the city to begin noticing for a project. It's mandatory, and it must maintain the health and safety of the community. So the project must maintain that. It must be compatible with the existing uses in the area. It must not adversely affect the peace, health, or impair the utility or value of property, or be detrimental to the safety or general welfare of the area. So those are very important to remember. The city had a few hearings on it and a few community meetings on the issue as well, with our council member voting for it because that's what he did. The Planning Commission is one of those meetings and one of those public hearings. They're actually the one that approved the facility. But the Planning Commission is only representative of half of the city. The Planning Commission that makes decisions for all of us has 7 members on its body. And some districts have multiple members on that commission. Districts 2, District 7, District 4, District 9, we don't have representatives. I don't see how that's possible. We've been misled. What I found is that this facility was developed with no transparency, no accountability. City council policies not followed, California state laws broken, environmental laws were broken, community was not informed, and the record that they made their decisions with in city council contained false information. Now you're probably saying, how do I know this? What is he saying? Is there proof? Well, that's why I have more slides. So we're going to get into that. The environmental impact report. To understand this, we have to understand the occupancy. Now I say dual occupancy because we asked the project director, Kathy Robinson. We said, Kathy, it's 160 studio apartments with a maximum capacity of 2 individuals. Kathy says, correct. Now, if we're looking into that, combined with 23 staff, that's 343 people that are going to be impacting the environment at this site that weren't previously there. Now, in 2010, they ran a study for a separate facility, a separate project, completely different with children and adults at 294, and they said it's going to be fine. It's not going to hurt the environment. It's going to be within the limits, but just barely. Now you're adding 50 people to it. What's going to happen? Well, we ran the calculations, and it's going to violate the Bay Area Air Quality Management District regulations for greenhouse gas emissions, but the city didn't care. California state noticing violations. A lot of text here. I'm going to read very simply the yellow part. Notice of the hearing shall be mailed or delivered at least 10 days prior to the hearing, and all owners of real property, as shown on the latest equalized assessment roll within 300 feet of the real property that is subject of the hearing. So essentially, if you live within 300 feet of a facility or a development, proposed development, you have to be notified 10 days in advance of what they're going to be doing. Now, the applicant for this was Charities Housing, but it was actually the county of Santa Clara who demolished the trees. They're the ones that demolished the church and took out the trees without permits. And they said that they didn't know. The county misunderstood and the church and trees were removed. How many projects has the county done? They know. They knew what they were doing. They just didn't want to tell us. So then we get into it, and I asked the project manager for the city, Jennifer Piazza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So this confirms there was no noticing done of any kind prior to the church demolition and the tree removal, and she goes, of course, because no project was on file. So they couldn't have, and they didn't. The public was not informed. Demolition occurred October. Notices were not sent out. CUP submitted in November. First notice sent out January. Violation of state law, Title 7, Division 1, Chapter 2.7, Code 65091.4. We had no way of knowing what was going on. The interim planning director, Rosalind Huey, she stated that, well, the city made the act legal after the fact. And I'm wondering, how is it that a city can legalize a violation of state law after the fact? It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's their story and they're sticking to it. City Council Policy 630. Does anyone know what Policy 630 is?
No.
Tell us, Jonathan.
I'll tell you. I'm glad you asked. Policy 630 is the way for the city to go above and beyond the state noticing requirements of 300 feet and 10 days. Is to make sure that everybody is included in all projects. And they want to make sure that, because they say they want us to know what's going on. That we're aware of issues, aware of developments, because they're important to us, they're important to our neighborhoods. This project, 2500 Center Road, just like the ACO or ACO facility, it will be a significant community interest proposal. Now, those projects require a 1,000-foot radius. They also require that residents receive the notifications 21 days in advance. And these are screenshots from the actual Policy 630. I just highlighted them so they're easier to see. They also require that the languages, or that the notifications are translated from English into Spanish and into any other prevailing language in the area. In our case, it was Vietnamese. And the entire notice, so not just a line that says, for information in this language, call this number. No, the entire notice. Because why would you do that? And also, they have to stay away from complex terms and terminology. Something that I just happen to have right here. This is the official public hearing notice. You're not going to be able to read it, or if you can, that's awesome. This was for the January 26th meeting, 7 p.m. City Council chambers. PQP, what is that? What is CEQA? Do people know what that means? Show your hands if you know what PQP or CEQA means. Robert? 2? A few of us, so a handful. That's great. The majority of us don't. So it shows us that we don't know what this actually means. So how are we supposed to infer what's going on? Why would we show up to City Hall if we don't understand what the notice is telling us? At the bottom here, it says that it was mailed out to a radius of 500 feet, which is incorrect. It's supposed to be 1,000 feet. The language here, it says for information in Vietnamese, for information in Spanish, call this number. Well, the language, the entire notice was supposed to be translated. Failure. Also at the bottom, it says December 15th is when it was mailed out. But I don't take their word for it. I double checked, and I found out it was mailed January 14th, which was only 12 days notice. 12 days is not 21 days. 500 feet is not 1,000 feet. A line in a different language is not the entire notice in a different language. And who knows what PQP is? So then we'll go to another one, same type of thing. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but I will say, raise your hand if you know what a vesting condominium tentative map for 2 airspace is. Because that's what the Planning Commission was doing at that meeting. God, I don't know what that is. Well, I do, but I didn't at the time. It was dated March 25th, 2016, and it was sent out to a 1,000-foot notice. But can anyone read that? Is it in Spanish or Vietnamese? No, it's not. And they also got it out 16 days ahead of schedule, not 21. So these are the kind of things that we had to fight. These were the things that we were up against. We did not know what was going on. They didn't follow their own policy. So you would expect a notice about a homeless facility to include the word homeless in it. Not one of them did. They hid it from us. None of the notices were entirely translated. They used complex terms. They weren't mailed out on time. They weren't mailed to the right distance. Now, the planning official, Steve McCarris from the planning department, he said that they didn't do anything wrong. He said they followed policy 630 perfectly. Nothing happened. There's no teeth. There's nothing. They can get away with it. I don't like that. So the crime impact. There was a study done by a person named Dr. George Galster. He has an MIT PhD. He also has 2 other degrees, a BS and a BA. He's written 125 peer-reviewed articles and 29 book chapters on this very topic: housing, neighborhood dynamics, residential reinvestment, racial discrimination, segregation, you name it. What he found was that large facilities over 53 units actually created more crime in the area. And it wasn't necessarily to the residents of the area, but the residents of the facilities that we were trying, of the people we were trying to help. That's not good. That's not good at all. He said here, the clientele of supportive housing facility is particularly prone to victimization. So if we're trying to help them, we're making them victims by putting them in these large facilities. And then he said, and his research found, that large supportive housing facilities increase crime by 30%, and it increased violent crime by 40% after opening. So why are we building large facilities? Why are we building large facilities that take long periods of time to develop, when 53 seems to be that natural cutoff number? And by the way, his research was supported by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. But I asked him, just to make sure that everything still was fine. So I'm an engineer. I don't know if everyone knows that. I like to make sure everything matches and lines up correctly. I asked him, does this still make sense? And he said, yes. Yes, it does. Everything he put in there, it still holds true today. So I went to another study as well from New York on impact of supportive housing, and they said the same thing. If it doesn't blend in with the surrounding community, it could have negative impact on property values. He said that if the residents of the facility are either targets for illegal behavior or are victim or are committing the illegal behavior, the housing might cause prices to drop. And their study was, again, 48 units. That was the mean. Again, I was beaten to the punch here with this email. Councilmember Oliverio from District 6 last year. He wrote, "City is known for several years. These types of facilities have higher calls for police service and fire service. So then why did this conditional use permit get approved? It can't adversely affect the quality of life in our neighborhoods or make us less safe. So why did they vote for it?" The deputy city manager in 2013, she wrote the following: "Homeless encampments are often a haven for the criminal element. People are avoiding law enforcement, engaging in prostitution, or dealing and using drugs. There are also those people who have mental health issues or substance abuse issues, which often draws a police response due to their behavioral outbursts." So this is a reminder, we need to help these individuals. We can't allow them to stay in these encampments. So we need to look at this and we need to figure out design criteria to develop these facilities responsibly and not put our neighborhoods at risk. And we can do this. Now also in this process, we have a lieutenant in the back. I'm not going to mention his name, but he may know the officer involved here. He had his rights violated. Not this one, a different one. He had his rights violated in this process. He attended this meeting by Charities Housing on February 18th, 2016. He's a great officer. And while we're on that subject, we need to support our officers more. And remember, the police, they can't be political. They're going to stay neutral on all of these facilities and projects because that's their job, and they're good at it. This Lieutenant Bruce Young of the San Jose Police Department attended the February 18, 2016 community meeting and expressed support of the project. This was written in the official memorandum that was given to the City Council when they made their decision to approve this project. They have to stay neutral in policy. They have to stay neutral on these issues. Lieutenant Young did stay neutral. He's a great officer. I asked him afterwards. I followed up with him. He said it's an absolute fabrication. He did not make those statements or express any kind of support for or against the project. He's doing what the lieutenant's doing in the back, making sure we're safe and listening to the community speak. That's what he did. Yet somehow he got in the record as saying he supported this facility. Who did that? Why was that allowed? And where are the repercussions for that? They don't exist. The city doesn't care. We need to make them care. Now, some more comparisons. So Charities Housing gave us, back to ACO, or ACO, they gave us 3 facilities that are going to be comparable to what they're going to build. 2 of them increase crime, or potentially increase crime. One had 96 police responses in the immediate area over the past 6 months. One in San Jose had 392 in the immediate area over the last 6 months. But one in Sunnyvale, which was 58 units, close to that 53 number, had 1. That's where we need to design. That's what we need to do. 53, right around that number. 58, right around that number. So what we can do is what we're doing right here. Form a coalition of neighbors, residents, community members, not just from one district, but from all districts to get together.
Yes.
We need to make, with one voice, our voice heard. 1 million people into one. We need to demand a policy, demand an update. City Council Policy 630. And we need to make sure that they are held accountable for not following that policy. And that needs to be financial, and that also needs to be disciplinary for city staff and for applicants. It's unacceptable. Our representatives cannot harm one community to help another. But that seems to be what's happening. We need to demand an independent study be performed on the impact of supportive housing, focusing on police, fire, and EMS response for our city. Because our city has different staffing. Our city has different needs. Our city has different roads, different geography than any other city. So we need to determine what works for us, not what works for somebody else. The deliverables would be the number of persons that we can safely house per facility. Is it 53? Maybe it's 60. Maybe it's 40. I don't know what the number is, but we need to have an independent review of that. And we also need to figure out the distance that will separate these facilities. Because you can't have 53 people and then 53 people right next door to that and 53 people right next door to that. It's the same thing. You need to spread them out. And if the city is so stubborn that they don't want to look into that study, if they don't want to do it, I believe we should use and adopt that 53. And we should also make it so that facilities are about a half-mile radius from each other to spread them out. And that would be a minimum. And we need to make sure that we support the development of facilities that do meet these guidelines. So as I've said a few times here, it's very important that we do help these people. We help them responsibly. We help them get on their feet. We help them become self-supportive and out of the homeless model as we know it. Thank you very much.